Renowned pawb, welcome everyone that's joining us for today's data science webinar. We'll get started in just a minute. I can see Pete Thomas, our head of skills and capability, has just joined. I'll just spotlight him and Rhys Williams from WRA, who's going to be presenting for us today.
Diolch yn fawr, Elise. Are we up and running? Are we okay? Croeso pawb. Diolch yn fawr am ddod. There's still lots of people joining. Fantastic. Croeso mawr I Rhys as well. Thank you very much, Rhys, for running this session. So welcome to our data science webinar series if you've not been before. We would like you, if you wouldn't mind, to mute your microphones. We have the chat up and running, so if you have any questions or comments, please do add them in there, and we'll be looking to either answer them if we can straight away or hold them for Rhys to have a go at the end of the session. These have proven very popular sessions over the last few months and continue to be so. So we're looking forward to today. I think, Elise, are we looking numbers have started slowing down in terms of joining?
Yeah, I think most people are kind of joined now.
Okay, right. Well, enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Rhys. Diolch yn fawr. Here we go. Using company's house data to investigate group relief at the WRA. Diolch, Rhys.
Thank you. I'll share my screen quickly, Elise, if you let me know if you can see it.
All working.
Perfect. Oh, wait there. There we go. That's better. Okay, so firstly, thank you to everyone for inviting us, for coming along, to Peter and Elise and everyone else organising. It's nice to be able to speak about the WRA a bit more publicly. So thank you for that, and thank you to everyone coming. Hopefully it's at least a little bit interesting for you and you take something away. I'm gonna sort of just give a bit of a warning that I've kept it fairly broad today, so maybe a bit lighter on the technical details than some people might like, but I'll chuck my email in the chat, and if you want any more technical, let me know, or any questions I can stick around at the end to go through. So I'm Rhys, I'm data scientist at the WRA, and as Pete said, we're going to talk about company's house data to investigate group relief. So the way I'm structuring it, I think, if it'll change, wait there. There we go. Well, I'm structuring it today. So I'll do a quick who on earth are the WRA, because nobody knows what group relief is. Just really quick intro into what we're trying to solve, why it's historically been just a bit of a problem for us, the approach we've taken to make it a bit more manageable, and the limitations of that, and just future things that we're thinking about possibly doing. So who are the WRA? Welsh Revenue were established in 2018 on behalf of Welsh Government to collect and manage two devolved taxes. So those taxes are land transaction tax, which some of you might know as stamp duty, and HMRC collect that still in England and did in Wales until 2018, but now LTT and the WRA collect that, and that's what I'll focus on today. That's all group relief relates to, but we do also collect landfill disposals tax as well. So I've just grabbed two little snippets from some corporate report somewhere, just to add a bit of context. But at the WRA, we say our overall purpose is to design and deliver Welsh national revenue services and lead the better use of Welsh taxpayer data for Wales. The way we do that is with something called our approach, and that's a Welsh way of doing tax. It's defined by the 3 C's. You'll see them at the top right of the every slide. That's the template. I didn't decide it, but they're gweithio, which means to work together and towards a common goal. There's gyda, which is about robust quality sort of data that can be relied on, reinforcing trust, and gweithio, which is about returning to the truth and just the way we work with taxpayers to resolve any errors. So I've just included those for a bit of context, and hopefully you can see how the work today wraps up and all that. So LTT then, so land transaction tax is, for most people, you encounter it when you buy a house or basically a residential, wherever you live, house, flat, bungalow, whatever it is. When you buy that transaction of the land, there's a portion of tax that becomes liable on that transaction. So most people encounter it there, but it's the same for companies. So when companies buy office space, retail space, manufacturing plant, whatever it is, when there's a transaction of land, there's a portion of tax that becomes liable. The only difference is, well, there are more differences, but the difference we're going to focus on is that when companies buy, sometimes they're eligible for what's known as group relief. And essentially, the way I think about it is this: if companies are part of a family and the family ties are close enough, it's a tick. If it's not, it's a cross and you can't do it. So I've just got two diagrams to kind of bring that to life a little bit, hopefully. So on the left, you've got company A, B, C, D. A owns B and C, and then C also owns D, and that's above the threshold for group relief, which is 75% or more ownership, and that's typically shares for companies. So A will own 75% or more shares of B, for example, in this case, and provided everything is above 75%, then any two nodes in this graph, or any two combinations of nodes, when property moves between them, the transaction's eligible for group relief. On the right-hand side, it's the same chart, right? A owns B, owns C at above 75%. But I've just changed it, so now C doesn't own D at above 75%. So that can be anything from 1% to 74%, or it can be 0%, and, i.e. a link doesn't exist. There's no connection between these companies at all. And in that scenario, if any pair of the companies A, B, or C, or any combination of them, move property, still great, eligible for group relief, you're fine. As soon as D becomes involved in the transaction as a buyer, a seller, an intermediary, whatever it is, the transaction is no longer eligible for group relief, and that's kind of the problem we're trying to solve. So today, I think that's come up. Sorry, I can't see my whole screen, but today, group relief has about 2,000 transactions that have been relieved. So since we started in 2018 to now, there's on the order of about 2,000, and pretty significant revenue involved. So there's about half a billion tax relieved within those transactions. So the numbers are quite big. I know it looks fairly simple here, and you might be thinking what's going on, and 2,000 is not that many, right? It's quite a few, but it's not crazy numbers. But hopefully you'll see that what happens is that in real life, company ownership is a bit more complex. So just two quick examples. On the left-hand side, we've got a chart that shows a real transaction. I don't know who this is. This is just random. So there's no data being exposed here. It's just a screen grab of one transaction. And in that case, the red nodes are one's a buyer, one's a seller. Again, I don't know which way around. But hopefully what you can see is that it even with a fairly small transaction, it's quite difficult to see if a path exists. So if you start at the bottom node, the bottom red node, one hop, and you end up in the middle of this hub, this little cluster of nodes, and then going out without knowing which way you're going is difficult. When you've got a picture, obviously it's obvious, right? There's 4 or 5 hops. But for the operational colleagues working this, previously they would have had to go to company's house website, type in the company number, find it, see who owns it, and kind of build up this chart manually. But you can see that it's difficult once you hop once to know which way to go without knowing the path. So it lends itself to this kind of graph data structure quite nicely. On the right hand side, this is all public data. Tesco, I don't even know if they bought property. I just thought it was a good example. So the red node is Tesco PLC, which I think is their holding company. And what I've got here is just an ego graph of that constrained to 5 hops. So if you think of the red node as being the center, and then anything that's contained within a path 5 hops or less out, I've returned. And again, you can see, although these all fall under the kind of the umbrella of Tesco, if 2 nodes were to move property between themselves here, it's not immediately obvious whether group relief was to be applied. And you can see that even the edges are different colors. So you've got greens, you've got reds, you've got blues and yellows, all which mean different things. But essentially the complexity of the ownership makes it really difficult going through the company's house website to assess some of these. So what we've done to tackle some of that, so we knew, sorry, We knew company's house data was publicly available, so let's go and get that. Once we've got that, we can link to WRA data. So all our group relieved transactions, we have information about the buyer and the seller. If an organisation is involved, is the organisation in WRA data present in company's house data? If they are, join them up, essentially. Once we've got that, we've got the ownership data from company's house as well, so we can generate a big graph. Check to see if a path exists between the buyer and the seller nodes. If it does, great, not a problem. If it doesn't, then we flag those as potentially risky transactions to the operational team to go and work. And this whole process is then just wrapped up in a workflow in Databricks, which is within our sort of Azure subscription, that just triggers when we run it. So I'll go into all these individually, but I just wanted to show what that Databricks setup looks like, because it alleviates a lot of the headaches of getting these things into production and spinning them up quickly for the ops team to consume. So it takes all the headaches of infrastructure out, basically. So this is our Databricks workspace, our production workspace, which sits in Azure, and this is the workflow. So the job is company's house processing, and it kind of consists of these 5 tasks in the middle. I know it might be small, but all you need to see is that the first one gets data, the middle 3 do some linkage stuff, and the last one finds the suspicious transactions that we want to pass on. So what sits behind those tasks is just a notebook. It's a Databricks notebook, which essentially consists of, I mean, whatever you want. The ones we write, well, I say whatever you want. It's like R, Python, Scala, SQL, I think. But ours consists mainly of Python and SQL. So the get data one does exactly that. It's a notebook that goes off, gets the data we need, and pushes it where we need it. The linkage jobs link that data together using Python, and then find suspicious does the same thing, just finds the suspicious ones and pushes it where we need it. You'll see on the right hand side is where it kind of manages a lot of stuff for us. So we can schedule this. I schedule this on the first day of every month at 5 a.m. So these just run sequentially. The linkage jobs are dependent on the get data one, and the find suspicious is dependent on everything. So if there's a failure, it doesn't persist. It just sends me an email and says it fails here, and I can go and debug it. And it just runs against our all-purpose cluster, which is called Spring 3, because we use version 3 of Spring to do some of the linkage. But that's it. So it takes a lot of the headaches out of the way. It's just notebooks that sit behind, and you run them sequentially on a trigger, essentially. So the first one of those tasks is getting the data. And we use, so we tried a couple of different ways for this, get company's house data. They have an API, just a standard REST one, and they also have a streaming one. We've tried both, but we kind of settled on the monthly grab of their bulk product. So all this is it's a snapshot of the data that exists in company's house at a specific point in time and sits behind a URL. There's a zip file that sits. Sorry, is the screen really small, Elise? I just thought, do I need to shrink it?
No, I think that's all okay, Rhys.
Oh, it's all right, is it? Fine, thank you. So they sit on a URL at company's house, and it's essentially a zip file that consists of lots of sub files that with the data in. So we get 2 products. We get the company's product, which is a list of live registered companies on company's house, and there's about 5.5 million of those. And then we get the persons of significant control product, which is the ownership detail. So company A owns company B, or person A owns company C, or whatever it is. And there's about 20. It's on the order of about 20 million of those, I think. And the way we do it, I've just put a little snippet of what's going on in one of the notebooks. So there's a URL. That's the URL that the zip file sits at. Then there's a company pipeline that sits behind it. Essentially, it just goes, gets the zip file, puts it in a temporary file store, and unzips it. And then we just iterate through the files within and push that to a SQL warehouse that also sits in Databricks. It's not perfect, right? It doesn't give us history. It doesn't give us change or updates. It doesn't give us the sort of, essentially the history of what's going on with the company. But what it does do is just let us get in nice and easy, nice and quickly, and get some into the operational guys to risk these. So once we've got the company's house data, I've just merged these into a sort of the central tasks into something I've called analysis. And that essentially consists of the linking jobs and the finding of risky returns. So for linking, we need to know organizations in WRA match companies in Companies House, and Companies House has a unique identifier called company number, which is obviously really well populated in their data, and pretty well populated in ours, so especially on the buyer side of the equation. So what we can do is join on that really simply, and it gives us about 87% coverage. For the remaining 13%, well, for that 87%, I've got a chart in the bottom right. I know it looks rubbish, so I do apologise. But what I want to get across is that for the 87% that we've matched, the similarity in name is really high, almost always 1, so an exact match. And if not, I think 98% or above 0.87 or something like that. So it's a really good sort of option for a linkage variable as well, given that name has to be unique in Companies House. So what we do is we use a postcode block. So firstly, that's just a join on postcode to reduce the comparison space. You're not comparing kind of Cartesian wise like a cross join would be in SQL. And then we take the closest matching record on name above a threshold. I think 0.9 is the threshold. And we're able to bump that 87% coverage up to closer to 95%, which is not too bad, actually. The remaining 5% aren't too much of a worry, because this is about shrinking an unmanageable data set and passing risky ones off to the ops team. So that 5%, given we can't find a record in Companies House that matches the LTT record, we immediately say is risky, which gives the guys a few more to work, but the numbers are small, so it's not too bad. Once we've got the ownership data, we've got the LTT data, we can create our graph. So I'm using Network X, and this piece of code is just to show how, we're not really reinventing the wheel here. A lot of these packages do a lot for you. So Network X, we can pass a pandas data frame with source and target. So that's our parent company and our child company, essentially. The edge attribute is the control weight. So that threshold, is it above 75 or below 75 or somewhere in between? And I mean, the eagle eye will see that's a bit redundant because I'm already filled in the data frame, but we build that graph up, and then we can iterate over our LTT data frame. So I've got a function called isRiskyReturn. It takes a row of the data frame, the source and the destination node in the graph, which is obviously the big graph.
Reese, your presentation is not moving on. It's still stuck on the company linking page.
Frighten me to death, man.
It's all right.
No, you're all right. It's just this last function, but can you see my mouse or no?
Yeah, we can see it, Reese.
Looks like some people can, yeah. I couldn't.
Yeah. All right. So this is risky return function. So it's in the bottom left. We're saying if the row, so for the row in question in our LTT data frame, that's the group relief frame. If the source and the destination nodes are the same, well, you can't move property to yourself, so it's immediately risky, right? You can move that. And then for those that don't hit that condition, we're looking for a shortest path. If you find a shortest path, i.e. the nodes are connected and they satisfy the threshold, then it's not risky and the transaction's eligible for group relief, great. If you can't, then we return it as risky, and that gets shipped off to SQL for us to expose to the ops guys. So that's the bulk of the analysis section, and then all we've got left to do is flag it and give the operational team something to work. So the way we do that is there's a Streamlit app that builds on top of that final sort of data frame that gets shipped off. I can't show much of it because there's taxpayer data in there, but I've just tried to redact some of it to give a bit of a feel. So we have group relief as one of the tabs on the left. You can select the minimum ownership threshold, so that's set at 0.25, but it can be 0.75 if you only want to look at those, and we can include overseas companies or not. And then the first tab is group relief transactions. Not on screen. It's just a summary of all the group relief transactions, whether they're risky or not. This focus view bit then allows the operational team to select a UTRN. So that's a unique tax reference number, I think it stands for. It's essentially a transaction that's claimed group relief. And then we can show the graph. So these two red nodes are the buyer seller in this transaction, and you can see the path between them. You can click to see whether it's the shortest path or just to show the shortest path. But you can see even in this transaction, it might not be easy to see. There's a lot of green lines, but this path actually includes blue lines, which are overseas companies. So we would flag this as a potential risk. The bottom data frame then is just a parent-child sort of parent company, child company, 2 columns, and then the threshold weight, and they link off to Companies House if they want to click in and go and see the specifics. That's all managed. So there's a local development environment in VS Code with a local Git repo, and it attaches to a remote Git repo in Azure DevOps. What we can do then is we can include a Azure pipelines file, so it's a YAML file where you can set a trigger and essentially a pipeline of what to do on that trigger. In this case, what we do is we trigger on main. So whenever I commit to the main branch, or someone commits to the main branch or merges to the main branch, this pipeline will trigger. And what we have is we have a build agent that comes, it installs the requirements from the requirements file, basically zips everything up in the repo and publishes it to a staging area. And then a secondary deploy agent comes in, takes that and pushes it to a web app that's been spun up in the Azure app service environment, I think. And then that sits on a URL for internal colleagues to consume. So you can see this, I don't know if you can see it, but it's .geli, WRA.gov.wales and /group relief .gel. Geli means reveal or something like that. Someone else picked it, not me. So that's how it's all managed. We get to publish things to them. So once after doing all that work, we've managed to kind of produce the following. So we've taken a fairly unmanageable set of 2,000 transactions and made it a slightly more manageable 650. That's more manageable in the sense that the numbers have decreased, but also now the operational team have some tools that they can go and investigate the individual transactions, so it's more manageable that way as well. The 650 are left with about 105 million at risk over the last 6 years, so it's a fairly substantial profile. And over the last few months, I think we've been working at about, or I say we, not me, the ops guys have been working at about the last 6 months, and they've managed to bring in just over 300,000 of additional revenue that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So it's a pretty big win that can go and fund services that need funding. Additionally, when they're going out to speak to agents about this sort of thing, we've had some anecdotal evidence that the agents are saying, you know, I apologize, didn't realize these were the rules, didn't know quite about the thresholds and stuff. So hopefully there's some improved understanding there that will result in some future compliance improvements down the line, which are a little bit harder to manage. To measure. Sorry, my throat's going. A little bit harder to measure. We won't necessarily be tax recovered, but there will be a portion of tax protected, hopefully, in that sense. So the money's still coming in and funding where it needs to fund. So just a quick touch on the limitations before I wrap up. So I mentioned we're using the Companies House bulk product, which is a snapshot in time. It doesn't give us the history. So any dead companies as such, fall out and are immediately scored as risky, even though they might have been valid to claim group relief at the time. That gives the operational team slightly more cases to work, but we could look at going to change or update or even connect into the stream in future. But it adds a kind of data management layer that seems a bit overkill for the application as it is, but it is something we're thinking about. The final Streamlit solution is pretty slow at times, actually. And the reason for it is that we're reading from SQL, which is a relational store, and creating the graph in memory each time. So every time the app runs, it creates that big graph with all those million companies in. That's obviously not ideal. We looked at Neo4j as a kind of graph data store. So the data persists, not only the nodes and the attributes associated, but the relationships are also persisted rather than created at read time, if you like. And hopefully that should show some speed ups, but we're looking at Azure Cosmos DB for that at the moment. The final thing is a bit of a pipe dream, to be honest, and probably seems a bit nuts. But some of the company's house data doesn't match up to what's in the confirmation statement. So the operational team are going out and work in some cases that we're flagging as risky based on the data, and finding that the confirmation statements, which essentially say who owns the company at that point in time, don't match and would actually make the transaction eligible for group relief. It's not the end of the world, but what we could do is they're unstructured PDFs, so we'd need someone a bit clever. We've looked briefly at the potential for LLMs to maybe streamline that process and take the unstructured and make it structured, so we can run the same process and see if paths exist. But that's kind of it for now. I hope it was kind of interesting and people got a bit out of it. That's all I've got for the minute. Like I said, if there are any questions, let me know and I can kind of try and answer them off. But yeah, there we go. Thank you for listening.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Rhys. My gosh, I'm sitting here thinking, oh my goodness. Well, I'm blown away. I think it's fantastic. We've got Adam straight in. Do you want to come in, Adam?
Yeah, thank you. And just to say, Rhys works with me in Welsh Revenue Authority. I'm the head of data analysis there, and he's somewhat underplayed the effort that's gone into this. He's made it sound a lot easier than it was, and the reason he's been able to succeed in many ways is he's come at it from the basis of trying to work it into the existing data management structures that we've got. That then makes things a bit easier to sort of interpret the results, reuse all of that data in conjunction with some of the stuff we've got. There's a hell of a lot of work gone on in the background to do some of the loading of the company's house data. And one of the traits of this project was actually to fail fast. When we first tried to get hold of the streaming data from company's house, it really wasn't in the best of conditions, and we had to sort of plump for that sort of minimum viable product option, really, of just using the data as it is without the history. Having said all that, it's really important to recognize that the project benefits from understanding the context around it. So this isn't necessarily about being super precise with the final results. It's about reducing that workload for the team in the operational area. There's still going to be human involvement here. They can still remove cases manually from all of this. And, you might have seen those numbers just at the end of Rhys's presentation, where we talk about the amount of money that's been recovered and think, well, 300k is a tiny proportion of 105 million quid. But it's 300k that's really been done in a test and learn sort of process. And we're now going to move into fully risking lots more of these cases. And you would expect to recover quite a lot more of that tax at risk. And I think the other thing to say is that there's no guarantee that 105 million is all at risk. We just know that's what's left in the cases that Rhys has been able to find that are worth looking at, with a tool that will help them look at it much more quickly. So it would never have been possible if you were starting with that 2,000 cases in the company's house database. It just wouldn't have happened. And this has now suddenly accelerated that process. And it's really important to see how data can play a part in doing that, with a bit of common sense around the technology and using the data carefully, but remembering the context that you still got that human intervention alongside it. And you need to marry the two up and get the best use out of the humans by taking out the grunt that they're not really adding any value in. And that's exactly what this project does.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, it sort of paves the way now, doesn't it? Because you've got some proof that it's working. You've made those. You've recovered exactly all that money.
Yeah,
oh, it's fab. So I know I've got a question in the chat from Jake, but I'm going to dive in front of, sorry, Jake, only because you touched on the streaming bit, and I'm fascinated by that. So you said about the problems with the streaming. Can you go into that a little bit more? What was the trouble?
So the biggest one with the streaming was, so you have to start from the bulk product anyway. So the stream essentially gives you changes that happen in near real time. So when something changes in the company size, they push it to the streaming API, and then you consume it. You're always listening. The difficulty was that you could only connect a certain number of days back. Now I forget, it was about 18 months ago we started this. But what happened was it went down for a couple of days, and it was longer than the reverse period you could go back. So there was no way to actually get those change or updates, and you'd have to start from the bulk product again. So we asked a couple of questions in the dev forum, and we couldn't really get to the bottom of it. And it seemed overkill to worry that much about real-time access when actually all you care about is what it looks like at a snapshot, which isn't perfect. But like I'd said, it ticks the boxes for the MVP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. It's fascinating. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. So over to Jake. Jake, I don't know if you want to come in, but the question in the chat is about how did you find the use of Databricks?
So we've been using. We've been using data. Do you want to go on mute, lad? I'm just your cat in the background. How did you find the use of Databricks? So we've been using Databricks for a couple of years now, and it was born out of we were using Ministry of Justice's Splink package, which at the time of use, it was like version 2, if anyone knows, and you had to have a Spark backend. So we used it out of necessity. It was the only place in Azure that you could get a Spark backend at the time. That's come on quite a bit now, and I don't know, you can do it everywhere, but Databricks hasn't evolved loads for my use cases. I know they're doing lots in the background, but for me, I only really use the notebooks, which is as normal as a Jupyter notebook. The only difference is you can run multiple languages against it, so it is quite handy that you can run SQL and Python. My pandas is not brilliant, so if I struggle, I just switch it over to SQL and I can write SQL against it and it executes fine. That's a really nice feature. The integration with MLflow is great. I like MLflow, so you can spin up specific experiments, and if you're fine-tuning any models, you can see how the metrics change over time and how your inputs vary against it. That's really nice. There's a bit of a tracking feature there, and then the workflows are really nice. So you can trigger things. They're the three main areas that I use. So the workflows are great. You can put things on a trigger, on a schedule, and you just series up these notebooks, and it goes through kind of procedurally and pushes things out. I was speaking to Evie and Joe last week from the data science team at Welsh Gov, and they were showing me their Azure machine learning workspace, I think it's called. Now, that wasn't great when we were looking at it at the time. It looks really similar to Databricks now, and as far as I know, you can run Spark backends against it, and actually it's cheaper in a lot of instances. So the difference from my point of view isn't huge, but I don't dive into the real Spark configurations and those kind of things where you're dealing with huge data sets that I would necessarily see the improvements. What it does do is it provides a platform where you can do end-to-end, data solutions, if you like, and get data in, out really easily and link everything together, which makes it quite a nice platform to work with. But like I say, I think there's plenty of other options out there that look fairly similar. It just manages the infrastructure and all the headaches that you don't really want to be thinking about when you want to dive in and work with the data, I guess, rather than the other stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thanks from Jake in the chat. Thank you, Jake, for that question. Brilliant. Last couple of moments then, folks, if you've got any more questions, we've got Adam and Rhys here who know this inside out. So ask away. Any more detail, please either type it in or happy to join if you'd like on camera. That would be great. I've got one about the future. So I know you're taking this on now is the idea, isn't it? Are you on your own doing this, Rhys? Have you got a team around you now, or have you got more people to support? What's your sort of schedule looking like ahead?
It's a mix, I guess. It's me largely doing the bits that I've presented, but there's a good data team here that handles some of the data management stuff in SQL, so our more sort of everyday stuff. And then I work quite closely with the operational guys to tell me, you know, this is rubbish, Reece, you need to fix this, or this is all right, let's do more of this. You know, the app's really slow, it's not working. Why are we seeing these cases? So really, it's me doing the probably bits that I presented, the data bits, but then it's the team sort of deciding the direction of travel, I guess.
Yes, real-time user feedback, isn't it? Yeah, they're helping correct it and move forward. Okay, fascinating. Thank you. We've got Dave Jones has asked the question in the chat there. And is this something HMRC could use and potentially reclaim even more tax?
I guess the answer is yes, but yeah, I had to put in the chat as well.
We have actually spoken to both of them about this. As I say, it's not as easy as sharing code because, of course, the code works in our infrastructure and relies on various, aspects of the way that we look after the tax slightly differently here, I would say, to HMRC. It's a much smaller part of their business, but it's probably more relevant to Revenue Scotland, who certainly have shown more interest actually than HMRC to date. And we're already in conversations with Reece's counterpart there about how they might deploy something similar to look into this.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. I think we're nearly there then. No more questions coming in by the look of things. I know, Elise, you've got a couple of more slides just for us to finish the session off. But just before we get to those, massive thank you to Reece. Fascinating presentation. I'm still looking at those numbers thinking amazing, and considering all that data flowing back and forth, it's fascinating. Thank you, and thanks to Adam for joining in there as well. Amazing stuff. So yes, on screen you can see, thanks Elise, you can see the feedback survey. We do this every time. It's just tell us a little bit about what you think, how it's working for you, whether we need to improve any of our processes around it, or indeed any other comments. That would be great. We leave that up on screen for a few seconds. Feel free to scan it and dive in. But Elise has also put the links in the chat. In top form, Elise. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll leave that for a couple of seconds. But I am actually going to move on, if that's all right. Elise, can we go on to the next one? Thank you. Because this is a particular passion of mine. You may know I'm head of skills here in CDPS, and this is our, I guess, flagship program now. We're really, really putting a lot of effort into making this program work. So if you're interested, please let us know. This is our leadership program. It's all about leading modern public services. There's no specific mention of the word digital in there, you'll not see, because it's open to people who are leading services or are about to lead services. And it's all about making connections with others across Wales. So there's a couple of in-person days in the series, as well as some online sessions and lots of input. But, the emphasis is all about making connections with other people who are leading modern services and battling similar problems right across the public sector. We've run one cohort so far. We've got a couple of days left on that one, and we're looking to launch the next one in January. We're trying to run this regionally, and as you can see on the screen, it's going to take place up in North Wales. Exact venues to be determined at the moment, but applications are still open. So if you're interested, please do click on those links that Elise has kindly put in the chat. Or get in touch to find out some more information. So we were in Southwest Wales, sort of Swansea area first of all. We're heading to North Wales next, and then back probably sort of Newport, Cardiff, Southeast Wales next time. But let us know what you think. Please get in touch if you have any questions. And I think that's it. Yes, it just falls to me to say diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for joining us. Much appreciated. It's lovely to see so many people here supporting the seminar series, and a massive thank you to the WRA, our colleagues Reece and Adam there, for their efforts. Thanks very much indeed. Okay, well, hwyl fawr. Hope you've had a nice spot for lunch. And if you haven't had lunch yet, now is the time. Go for it. Thanks very much, all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.